And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Monday Mornings Off the Ball AM. We're here with you all the way until at 9:30. If you want to get in touch, you can just use the hashtag OTBAM and leave a comment. There are plenty of comments rolling in about one of the busiest weekends of sport on and off the field that I can remember in a long time. Certainly one of the most controversial weekends that we've had to deal with. We'll get into the John Delaney saga when we hit the newspapers in a minute. We haven't talked about the football and Ireland's performance. They're getting a free pass. That's apparently the consensus, because nobody was really watching the game enough to consider having an opinion about the 97, 98 minutes of dross that we were inflicted with by Ireland. You were watching the game intently.
Well, we kind of had to, we had 2 hours to film, myself and Stephen O'Donnell in the studio with Nathan providing in-depth updates from Gibraltar. So we kind of had to watch it, and the phone starts buzzing at around 5 o'clock saying something might be happening later. I'm like, this is extremely interesting. I wish I was at home right now watching this game so I could look at my phone for 2 hours instead of looking at the game. So I put aside my phone, fully expecting to pick it up at 7 o'clock saying that John Delaney has left the FAI. And that hadn't transpired. So turned out it was actually a pretty good decision to just sit there and watch 90 minutes of Ireland. And when you talk about getting a free pass, are you talking about like the distraction of an EasyJet plane behind the goalposts? Or when they're shooting into the other goals, the distraction of a beautiful rock? Or are you talking about the wind, the plastic pitch, whatever it may be? Like, I'm not sure what the free pass is based on.
No one's rushing to judge how bad we played because, well, the facilities weren't good and, they're not used to wind.
Yes, and it was definitely the facilities that allowed Ireland to completely go into their shell and start pumping the ball long frequently after they went 1-0 up. We can blame the facilities on that, right?
Yeah, and the fact that Gibraltar sat deep like every bad team in world football does in any game where they're overmatched.
To be fair,
they almost scored. And from a set piece, they almost scored from a set piece.
Is that as good? Like when was the last time we saw a save like that from an Irish goalkeeper?
It was great, yeah.
It was, not that we've had a bad, like goalkeeper's been one of our strongest positions. I just think in any walk of life, in any level of football, that was an outrageously good save from Darren Randoph, especially with nobody on the post at that moment. I do think that the discourse would be a little bit different this morning, a little bit different had, say, the Gibraltar goalkeeper not made that incredible save in the first half, or that ridiculous clearance in the first half as well, which would have resulted in a 3-0 win, which I think you predicted last week would have been a reasonable start, nothing earth-shattering, but the fact that it was 1-0 and that save had to be made skews things hugely, and that's just three significant eventualities in the game that have gone otherwise. So perhaps you can say that we need to calm down a little bit until we see tomorrow night. But I also had my eye on Georgia against Switzerland the other day, and they keep the ball on the carpet quite a bit. They like to play football, and it's hard to know actually if a team who aren't world beaters that do like to play football is a positive or a negative for Ireland. I'm starting to think it might actually be a positive that they might try and play the ball around us and maybe be like, nah, screw you, we're going to play crap football and we're going to beat you 1-0.
Well, they did it. You mean exactly the same as happened the last time?
Well,
where they massively outplay us and we scratch a win and we're like, this is terrible, this is appalling, we can't afford it.
Exactly.
But when the same thing happens, if we're lucky enough to get 3 points, everybody will be like, Big Mick, the good times are back. Such a happy dressing room, otherwise we wouldn't have got through that.
Yeah.
I just think that there's double standards. If Keane and O'Neill had a scratchy 1-0 win in Gibraltar and blamed the wind,
it would have been the low point. The lowest of the low.
Come on. I mean,
they've reached an nadir. Why has John Delaney not sacked Mick McCarthy, or I should say Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane? That is what we will be talking about this morning.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that where are the signs that Mick McCarthy has become a really good international manager? Where are those signs? Show me the signs. I want to see the evidence. I need to put my finger in the holes of the evidence.
Like the evidence that we can't accurately judge where Mick McCarthy is at is quite plentiful, as in he didn't have any friendlies leading up to this. And again, don't want to give a free pass, but I do want to wait until tomorrow night before we actually make a judgment of how this thing has started.
The bit about so the experiment of having our two best players on the right-hand side of the defence and midfield, it didn't work. Is that entirely down to the players, or can good coaching convince or make the right back right side of midfielder? Because he seems like a good footballer who seems to be a fairly naturally intelligent, so he seems to have some football intelligence, but we can't make that work. And we've now had that experiment and we're ripping off the bandage on that one and going, okay, that'll never happen again, but we can't make any other judgments on the crappy performance
Well, like, who's saying that? Like, okay, so to what extent?
Big Mick said after the game that the experiment of having Matt Doherty on the right side of midfield didn't work, and he took him off after however long it was.
He also said that Robbie Brady going in didn't exactly work either. The idea that it didn't work, like to what extent did it not work, and why do we need to completely ditch this now? Like,
I agree, but it sounded like he was ditching it, that it's never going to happen again. Let's wait and see. Maybe he picks Matt Doherty on the right side of midfield. Matt Doherty's a good game in Dublin, and I don't know, but like,
what's the solution? Is it bench Matt Doherty? Is it play him on the left? I think that'd be.
Well, that would be next. Yeah, play him on the left, see what happens.
Bit harsh on Enda Stevens?
I mean, not really, because this guy's better than you at the moment. Like, get into the Premier League next season and let's see how you do. And then it's like, okay, all right, let's go.
There's a situation there where Matt Doherty is kind of on a pivot for the entire game and doesn't really know what to do. And is that his fault? Is that the way Ireland play? It's kind of hard to tell. I'd like to see him in the Aviva, in that position again. Let's just be sure that this thing didn't work, because when I say to what extent did it not work, it's not like, I know the answer to that question. It wasn't a disaster. Like, it didn't blow up in our faces. Like, it's in fact going down the right hand side of the park, and granted Matt Doherty was not the instigator of this, but going down the right hand side of the park in the first half allowed us to have our biggest periods of joy. Like, that second quarter of the game when we played the best football on Saturday night did come down the right hand side of the park. So it was not a disaster. That being said, you can't say, well, that really worked and that is something we should definitely be trying again. My suspicion is that we should just give it one more shot. Give him the start again at right midfield and let's see what happens, because it's not like there's a world beater at right mid that's looking to push Matt Doherty out of there. What we do know is that Matt Doherty is a Premier League talent and is well able to mix it with the best. Can we push him into this position where he gets the best out of himself there? The suspicion, and I will completely accept that argument, is that he can't, but let's just be sure of that before we completely move things around, because let's face it, at left back, in Enda Stevens, we do have a very, very good player as well.
All right, so you're happy?
I'm happy to, when you talk about changes for the second game, like, I don't know, are you mixing things up in midfields? Like I know Conor Horan got man of the match, Jeff Hendrick scored the goal. Is that the sort of midfield that's going to give us joy at home to Georgia? The idea before the game was that it wasn't. And then the other idea is up front, like David McGoldrick and Sean Maguire. We don't have a whole pile of options up front at the moment, which is the obvious thing. So you're actually kind of looking at a suite of changes here that probably can't be made. Who is the better option? Like, Robbie Brady is probably the only player that you can say can come into the squad and improve a position. But the question is, what position? Do you put him on the left instead of James McLean? Maybe that's the one change I would make. Yeah,
well, there are options if he deals with them. We're going to get Nathan on the line a little bit later on to talk about that game and also the continuing fallout from the John Delaney situation. We'll deal with that in a couple of minutes in the newspapers. Nathan was one of the many of the Irish journalists who took that picture of John Delaney under the VIP exit, but it's not quite exit, is it? It's like, actually, you know what, I'm going to have all the same access and power that I've always had. I'm just going to not look after the day-to-day running of the business, which is, I presume, the less interesting bits, right? Like, the best bits are the stadium, dealing with FIFA, dealing with UEFA, trying to get a World Cup bid together, if that's actually going to happen. Like, that's the best, most glamorous parts. The worst parts are, like, having to deal with the problem child of the league and, you know, the day-to-day nuts and bolts of being a CEO of, like, grassroots football, of local sports partnerships, of having to have conversations with the PFAI and having to deal with Sport Ireland. All that stuff off my desk, thanks very much. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of a pay cut, but who cares? I've got all that money coming from UEFA anyway. So,
if I'm John Delaney, or if I'm the CEO of any football association around the world, my number one aim is maximise time in Neon. Just get to Neon as much as possible, get to Zurich as much as possible, mix it with rich people as much as possible, because it is very, very possible to do that in footballing circles. So really, like, is John Delaney's set of skills better served doing that sort of thing? Maybe it is. That's what the people defending him would say. But then you look at the slew of information that we've got over the past fortnight or so, and really Peter, there are some ridiculous details emerging from the bridging loan to the rent to all this sort of thing that we've seen in the Sunday Times yesterday. That it just creates this rather weird spectrum around things, and it kind of comes off the back of him saying that he's going to become executive vice president on Saturday night, which was a rather unusual move. Like there are so many questions that need to be answered on this front, and hopefully we'll get some sort of clarity on this front. I'm not so sure if we will, but like, what does an executive vice president do, I think, is the number one question on all of our minds.
Well, like, they were pretty clear at what that new role will entail. It will be the representative for UEFA, and you need that level of role within your own association before you can work for UEFA. Why does that role have to be a paid role? Does that role have to be a paid role? Is it possible that role could be one of those roles where, you know, he donates that salary back to the FAI if he is going to be mainly working with? One of the other issues arising from the papers today was that this might make it more difficult to get a really high quality candidate when you realise that there is somebody else who has power over these very important projects, who doesn't report to you but who reports directly into the board, and you're kind of on the same level as them. So, like, do you really want to be the third wheel of a relationship where everybody on the board basically has had a long-term relationship with this other candidate or this other person who has as you said, a relatively nebulous job description? We'll move on. We'll come back to that a little bit later on, and we'll try and reflect as much of the opinion that is coming across all of our social channels over the last 24, 48 hours as well. But the other big news at the weekend in terms of Gaelic football was the return of David Clifford, who, you know, people were, well, what if he's going to be like a second season in the seniors sophomore slump from David Clifford? Instead, he walked on water yesterday, and you were there to witness it.
Yeah, he was class. He was absolutely class yesterday. He scored 5 points for Kerry in that win against Roscommon. You would have probably seen, people who were watching League Sunday last night would have got a glimpse of what he did. It's just his sharpness, his dummying, his point taking it all seems to be where it was last year. And I do wonder if there was a bit of an overreaction, from me included, last week when they lost to Mayo, and when there was moments during the league when they perhaps were a little bit more defensive. It seemed like a very obvious thing to say at the time, but the fact that David Clifford was yet to come back is something that is still worth reiterating, and we won't get full clarity on the true importance of his return until next Sunday, until the league final, until he's actually back in Croke Park. James Donaghy, again, got a couple of more minutes under his belt yesterday, looked very, very good as well, and they're starting to put together a forward line that can potentially challenge anybody in the country. He's just amazing to watch. He's as you say, walking on water. I can't really put it better myself in terms of the way he gracefully glides around the park, the way he manages to make things happen out of absolutely nothing, which is something that is so vital around this stage of the year when you're playing in grounds around the country in the National League. And his return just kind of coming perfectly as the weather starts to get a little bit better, as we start to get away from the ridiculous sort of conditions and high winds that we've seen at some stages in the league. And you kind of look at what was happening a few miles west yesterday afternoon as well, and that Mayo performance, and you start to remember that Mayo have basically played this entire league in what has been a tropical storm. Basically all their games have been, like, I think, the worst collection of weather that any team has ever put together in a National Football League, and they were kicking points yesterday that David Clifford would be proud of. Like, Fergal Boland, just from watching the highlights last night, was in sensational form. Kevin McLaughlin looked brilliant for them. Aidan O'Shea was brilliant once again for them yesterday. And
so they won't keep the ball kicked out to Kerry in the league final, will they?
And suddenly you're like looking at this week's league final, and it's starting to remind me of, say, how the heavyweight boxing picture was 12 months ago, where
when we thought everybody would meet.
Well, where we thought that Anthony Joshua was the unassailable leader in the heavyweight division, which is the view of Dublin at the moment, until, you know, they don't get the opportunity to play or go up against one of the other contenders earlier on in the calendar year, and then suddenly we get to the end of the year and we have Deontay Wilder against Tyson Fury, and we're like, hold on a minute, are one of these guys actually capable of beating Anthony Joshua? And many people after that fight could make that argument. Can that argument be made after this Sunday? Well, I've got a feeling it's going to be an absolute corker on Sunday, especially if the weather holds up, because these two teams played bloody good football yesterday afternoon. We've got a situation now where Mayo are back properly, and Kerry look like they're onto something as well.
Yeah. One last point in this before we move on. You're saying that Dublin are going to regret the fact they didn't reach a league final and get to test themselves in a big game on a Sunday afternoon in a cauldron because it would have been 40, 50,000 if it would have been Kerry, or 40, 50,000 if it had been Mayo in the league final, that they're going to regret that missed opportunity. They're going to get beaten this year. They're not doing 5 in a row, is what I'm hearing you say.
I'm thinking that I'm starting to get a lot of hope. I'm starting to feel quite hopeful for the idea that this 5 in a row may not happen.
Here's what's...
Sorry, we can talk about it later.
Yeah, I mean, I set it up for you there, and you're like, oh, maybe, perhaps on a wet, windy, maybe.
The probability is that Dublin will still win the All-Ireland.
Sports pages, but that's not, I mean, we don't come here to hear your probability zone. Alan Quinlan, 8:05, talking about the big build-up to the return of the Heineken Champions Cup this weekend. We'll look back on the GAA Leagues at 8:20. We'll bring in the sports news from Darren at 8:35. Kieran Donaghy's going to join us at 8:45. I suspect he'll be a little bit croaky after the Garvey's Tralee Warriors managed to miraculously win all the rest of their games at the end of the season. It's been a sensational back-to-back with Marion, where they win in overtime in Dublin on Saturday and then just see it out, get the business done on Sunday. Brilliant end to the league. We'll talk Don Delaney with Nathan Murphy around about 9:05. Ireland versus Georgia. Also with Nathan, and Mike Carlson's going to join us to talk about the end of the Rob Gronkowski era, because he's retired. Suddenly Tommy's like, oh, is he? Is that happening? It is, yeah, a little bit later on, I hope. Gronk retired over the late last night, decided his 29-year-old body had enough.
Very smart decision. At the age of 29, you've won it all. You can't do any more damage to your body. I just think if you're in Gronkowski's shoes, it's an absolutely correct decision, especially given he's a tight end in one of the most attritional positions on the pitch. Not that there is any unattritional position in American football. So, he's made the correct call. I actually didn't see a statement. I'm not sure did he refer to preserving his health or anything like that, but I'm sure that was part of the decision.
Yeah, it was a badly typed out Instagram statement. It was a perfect finale for Gronkowski. I want to move on because big injury yesterday for the Galway hurlers. Joe Canning at the end of the game suffered an injury and ends up leaving the field in the league semi-final against Waterford on a stretcher. So Micheál Donaghy said he believed it was a groin injury that forced Canning off the pitch at the end of the game. Let's hear from Tommy Walsh, and here's first Micheál Donaghy about the injury that he received.
Hey, look, he's just literally still being assessed by the medical, so until they determine what it is, and we see, as I said, the severity of it, we'll be acting upon it tonight, I'm sure, or tomorrow.
Is it his ankle or knee or?
No, it's his groin. I think it's his groin. Yeah, at the minute. Yeah. So, look, he took a few heavy hits. I'm really intrigued to watch it back and see the hits he got going into it just before it. So
he tends to get a lot, obviously, because he is the pace he carries. Obviously, it's always a bit of a risk, but it must be. When you see those hits coming in, you must be worried at what point is it going to happen that something like this will happen.
I know, but look, that's the nature of it. But as I said, there was one in particular I'd be interested to see it back.
Which one?
I'd like to see it back to see it. But it'll be quite obvious.
Now, I'm not sure if you noticed, was there any hit in particular that you felt that, do you ever feel perhaps Joe Canning might be targeted by teams?
No, I think all the opposition forwards will be targeted by the defenders. That's just the nature of the game. Like, you don't want to give any forward that and soft. And like, looking at it myself, I didn't think there was too much in anything. Like, it was a physical game at times, and like when a forward is going through like that, like, defenders trying to take the ball off him, sometimes he'll get a belt here and a belt there, and the referee sometimes has to play advantage, because if you pull it back, the whole crowd is getting on, because there was a goal chance on, a realistic goal chance, and I think it was just a shoulder he took at the very end and came down awkwardly.
Yeah, so fingers crossed he's going to be all right. We're going to take you to the newspapers and actually start with the photograph of this. So that is Joe Canning lying prone after a shoulder from Kevin Moore. Now, this comes in the back of Dr. Kevin Moore speaking with the Irish Examiner recently enough. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's the former Donegal team doctor. He might actually still be the Donegal team doctor. And he's been talking about the recent backlash in high tackles, in hurling in particular. The couple of weeks back when we were talking about Cork and Kilkenny having players sent off, there was a massive outcry about one of those tackles and also one of the Tipperary red cards recently. And he was saying that I'm seen as a football doctor, but having said that, I'm on the Medical, Scientific and Welfare Committee. There was a backlash after Tony Kelly being sent off, but certainly I did see some tackles over the weekend that could be dangerous, no doubt about that. There's no equipment that can help prevent it. There are some studies that have suggested players wearing protective support are given a false sense of security. So he's saying that helmets actually might be contributing to hurlers receiving concussions because they believe that they're somehow protected from it. So hopefully the high tackle is something that comes out of the game even more. FAI rent payments to Delaney may spark wider ODCE review. So this is the Office of the Director of Corporate Enforcement who are investigating the FAI, and now the fact that it doesn't look like the remuneration and the rent supplements were clearly recorded or certainly made public in the FAI's accounts. I mean, obviously they're there somewhere, but the ODCE may end up widening the scope of their potential investigation. So Delaney's on the front of the Irish Independent, and on the back, Galway floored by Dacia's late charge, and that's the picture of Joe Canning being stretchered off. Doesn't look like a groin injury there. And then Delaney isn't only one who should go, the board should go too. That's the headline on Eamon Sweeney's piece. We'll deal with that in a little bit. And then the Examiner, the power and the throne. FAI begins search for new CEO as Delaney goes global. Is that going global in terms of the story being covered, or is that the fact that he's going to end up working properly for UEFA? More than likely. The back of the Racing Post this morning, the full Monty, England versus Montenegro. Former chief biter, it says BHA should focus on the positives. And then Walsh criticises the tone of festival briefings. This is good. Rugby Walsh has criticised the daily briefings conducted by officials before racing at the Cheltenham Festival as condescending. I felt the manner in which some of the information in the briefing was delivered was wrong. The tone used by some of them and the way in which they spoke to adults and professional sports people just wasn't right. They spoke to us like little kids. That's not the way you speak to anybody. This is daily meetings with the clerk of the course at Cheltenham. And then the Times, who obviously have done all the legwork on the John Delaney story. Fans to stage a Viva protest over Delaney. You've got to assume that there'll be no flags confiscated at this game. And they're also quoting from Brian Kerr. Delaney had a vice-like grip on the association since he's been in it. There's been a lot of bad feeling about the lack of transparency in the association for years, and I've been critical of it because the AGMs have been a farce. The lack of information, the lack of the ability of people to ask questions at the AGM and the organisation that they're the players in has been extraordinary. So that ain't going away. That ain't going away.
The Irish Daily Star this morning on the front page lead with red cards. It's Eamon Dunphy saying it's time for Delaney and the board to go. The back of the Irish Daily Star goes with they think it's all over, but FAI saga is far from done as new questions emerge. You got Joe Canning lying prone on the ground there yesterday after Kevin Moran's shoulder in the Waterford win. The back page of the Mirror goes with few. Relieved McCarthy, glad to see back of minnows, and now he wants Irish to make it 6 points on a Viva return. You've got that story about Joe Canning as well, and Pochettino saying City will be rocked by our new stadium. So Mauricio Pochettino watched Tottenham christen their futuristic new home and warned they were ready to rock Champions League rivals Manchester City. They've moved in there 7 months late at long last. The Herald at the front page goes with FAI's loan goal. Politicians want answers over Delaney's loan and €3,000 rent. Former CEO will still pick up €120,000 salary. The back page of the Herald then goes with FAI turmoil. More questions as Delaney steps down to take new role, while Dubs fall short as Treaty march to final. They were beaten in the hurling semi-final in the league yesterday. Then a couple of the UK back pages. The Guardian goes with a picture from the Wales-Slovakia win. Wales 1, Slovakia 0. Giggs' men kick off with a win. That's Daniel James celebrating after scoring the only goal of the game on his competitive debut. And hostile welcome is the headline on Dominic Fifield's piece here. England on full alert for fiery atmosphere in Montenegro. The Telegraph then goes with the £1 billion stadium opens for business. It's Paul Hayward reporting there from London, and Southgate warns we must stay calm. England manager urges players to keep discipline after Montenegro Ultras promise hellish atmosphere.
All right, Andy McGeady and Shane Keegan were on the pay-per-view. You can get your podcast there, wherever it is you get your podcasts, or offtheball.com/podcasts, probably the best place. And they were talking about the new 50-22 rule, which has been proposed law change in rugby. It's designed to promote attacking play. Have a look.
I think it's a really clever incentive.
Simple.
Yeah, because the GAA are in the midst now of trying to deal with new rules and the law of unintended consequences, and it is complicated. Yep. But this law just seems to incentivise to the right amount, the right extent, doesn't change the general nature of the game.
And you don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it.
If you don't want to drop anyone back, if you want to say, listen, we think your kicker's rubbish, that's fine too.
Yeah, you'll know you'll need a great kicker, you'll need a solid line out, so you've got to win your own line out, say it's 5-10 metres from the opposition try line. But there are teams against whom you just cannot give them line-outs 5-10 metres from the try line. So you'll have to leave men back, therefore more space, and you might see more running rugby as a consequence.
Potentially. And this is the thing, it's all about potential. Even if you make those defenders think you're shaping to do that, suddenly space has appeared. So it changes the scope of what could be in front of you.
Yeah, so it could change the scope. What's going to be in front of you? That's from the pay-per-view yesterday. Alan Quinlan is here. Do you like the way that they constantly evolve and change the rules in rugby? Is it a good thing?
Yeah, I think you need to evolve a little bit. The game, there's a real trend in, I know this 50-22 proposal is possibly more kicking, but it's more kicking with a view to trying to create a little bit of space in the front field. I listened to Toby Flood recently, and he's around a long time. He's playing for Newcastle now, the former England international, just saying that when he gets the ball at times now, he's just seen a wall of defenders coming at him. And so it may make the opposition. And Eddie O'Sullivan's spoken a lot about this, and he always had a good kicking strategy when I played under him, and a plan about, finding space in the backfield. ROG, who is probably the master at finding that space in backfield, throughout the years when I played with him for Munster and Ireland, was brilliant at that. So rugby does have to evolve, and just sometimes there's trends and things happen. There's a few frustrating ones that annoy me at the moment. The maul is one of them. Where
how easy it is to take it down legally?
Well, no, it changed in 2016 where they changed the law where the maul spins around, and if you don't break your bind, you can stay on the opposition side.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is it's enabling and allowing players to kind of block out the scrum half getting it back, or the guy at the back of the maul when he's holding on to the ball. If there's opposition jerseys around him, he's panicking a little bit, and it's not as clean and as clear cut. I think that's a complete mess. The referees are not really policing that, and we're seeing a lot of mauls just break down. And I know people might say mauling in rugby is a negative, but I think it's a real positive thing, and it's a real good attacking weapon that make the opposition stay in the maul. Because you could have 2 guys, you could have 4 or 5 guys against 8, and those 4 or 5 can break it up very quickly. It's another way that might keep those loose forwards or hang at the sides in the maul. I think it's very poorly managed that. But that 50-22 thing is a good idea, because hopefully it would take a few people into the backfield. And
Ron Maguire coming out of retirement to sit there in the backfield,
sit back like a quarterback in NFL and just be protected and not really kick a lot. The trend is kicking. I mentioned this throughout the last 6 weeks, and I was here a few times and in commentary that England kicked 42 times against France in Twickenham in round 2, and there's nobody left the stadium that day, or none of the English journalists spoke about it being a negative, because they were all intelligent kicks, and Owen Farrell kicked a lot on the run and found green grass, and their contestables, they won them back, and they scored 7 or 8 tries. I can't remember exactly, but they got a significant big win against France, and it wasn't seen as a negative. So sometimes we view kicking as a real negative thing, but accurate, good kicking isn't bad as well in the game. And certainly the way the game is gone, there's Wales scored 10 tries in the championship and won a Grand Slam based on incredible defence. And going back to when we had our first defensive coach with Ireland, Mike Ford, for my first couple of years, obviously we had a plan defensively, but we didn't really have a system. And when he came in, that kind of was like, this is incredible. We have a system now, we have accountability. People there's a certain rules about what way you defend and staying connected to the inside and the outside. And nowadays it's just it's a strategy to stop the opposition, which is exactly what coaches should do, but it's creating a lot of these collisions and a lot of the, Dave McIntyre is going to kill me because, look, I'll be honest, I'm not going to steal one of his
Go for it.
ideas, but I'm going to give credit him with it, okay? So we're going to credit him. And he said it to me in the last, because we were together for 6 or 7 weeks, obviously doing games, and you see teams creeping up the side of rucks, and like so many times when you're in a commentary position, you're saying that's offside, that's offside, that's offside. I'm not talking about Ireland here, teams playing against Ireland. I'm talking about all teams in the competition. And he said to me, well, if you bring back the law of the scrum half being able to throw a dummy, it stops that creeping up and it stops that sprinting off the line as well, because they've nearly got to take their time and slow down. Whereas nowadays the ball is at the back and they're literally in a 3-point start and they're just herring off the line and stopping the opposition. And he said to me, well, if they brought back the scrum half being able to throw a dummy, teams wouldn't be able to get off the line as quick, and then you might be able to see backlines playing a little bit more. I thought it was really good for a fellow who hasn't a clue.
It's obviously one of the main features of American football as well, isn't it? Like kind of a false start. I'm not sure it's the false start, the offensive or the defensive sign, but like that really benefits things as well. It allows kind of just a little bit more caution on the defensive side, which gives the quarterback just a little bit more time in some cases, which in rugby's sense will give the attacking team, the team with the ball, just that little bit of extra time, which could be huge and better for the game, I think.
Yeah, well, it's the collisions and the impacts and the ability to slow down the opposition. And it's ironic we're saying this after Ireland struggled a little bit on those fronts, that kind of pressure at the weekend. But I just think as a spectacle, there is a trend for kicking now, because sometimes you're playing into the opposition's hands, particularly if they have a lot of people on their feet and they allow you to have the ball. Teams that dominate possession are not winning rugby matches anymore.
Yeah, especially when they're Ireland. Briefly, this week, it's the Heineken Champions Cup build-up. Not the best ever final round of games for the Irish provinces. Munster very stop-start, certainly very slow to get started at home at the weekend. Leinster beaten. Also were decent, I think it's fair to say, but they've significant injury problems, so not great from the Champions Cup.
No, and it's look, the only thing we're guaranteed is that there's going to be one Irish representative in the semi-finals. Hopefully it'll be two. I think it's a very difficult trip for Munster to go to Edinburgh. They've John Barclay back and Bill Mata at number 8, Hamish Watson. They have a lot of good players, particularly in that forward pack, and Munster were poor. I think Johan van Graan, he kept Farrell on the bench, he kept Klein on the bench, and they made an impact when they came on. They changed things around. They were dreadful in the first half, Munster against Zebra. But look, they got a win, they got a bonus point win. I think in the bigger picture with Pro 14, it was so important that they got the bonus point win, with Glasgow winning as well and trying to get that home semi-final. Ulster, on the other hand, they've injuries for Dan McFarlane. So it was always going to be a daunting task. But these are different weeks, Ger. They're really exciting. It's European Cup week.
We'll get into that a little bit later on in the week. I did want to ask you about this. It's a report from Midi Olympique. We're getting well versed at reading the French rugby papers. Tony Lean tweeted, according to Monday's Midi Olympique, Donaghy is ready to sign up with a short-term contract with the French Rugby Federation for the World Cup as a defence coach. So that was tweeted last night at 9:21, and then we have an image of the paper too here. So that's just the front cover of it. But O'Gara prêt à signer. O'Gara ready to sign. 15 de France.
I think it'd be great for him. Particularly, again, it's. We're not sure how they go to World Cup, France, but
they could win it. I mean, that's madness.
They're crazy. It's crazy, French rugby. But I think it'd be a fantastic opportunity for him. And they're the reports all last week. I can't break any sort of protocol. He'll kill me. But obviously, Tony Lean, he writes for the Examiner, so Tony's getting some information there from ROG as well. So. Look, it's quite open in France now. Anyone you talk to in France, that they have made contact, and it's just whether they put a formal proposal together for him. But I think to bring someone like him in would be...
It wouldn't have any impact on the stuff in New Zealand, because obviously that's...
No, they'll finish. The Super Rugby finals are a little bit earlier this year, the kind of July 7th or 8th or something, so he'd be pretty free to come back and work with them over the summer and in their preparation. So
just one point, I know we're about to wrap here. It's an exciting prospect from Ronan O'Gara's point of view, because you've got someone like Entomac in there, and you can kind of create a culture around a 10, and it's going to go in the right direction over the next couple of years. If only there was a situation in Ireland at the moment where we need a bit of fresh thinking perhaps at number 10.
Yeah, to have
is there a missed opportunity if we look across at France and they're getting the best out of Ronan O'Gara, and we're thinking to ourselves,
I think his stock has risen so much in France, and that's coming from the players. There's a number of wrestling guys in that French squad, and Bernard Laporte would have spoken to them. It's like the move to New Zealand when they spoke to Dan Carter, and if Dan Carter endorses you, you know. So I think the French players are endorsing ROG, and that's only brilliant for his CV. But I've said it many times before, I'd love to see him be part of Andy Farrell's coaching ticket going forward, but that's up to Andy and what he's thinking, and obviously with ROG as well, what he wants to do, whether he wants to come back and or does he want to go back into French rugby. He still has an appetite to keep going, and in his development. I've often said it to him, one of these days he's going to have to make a decision, and the role with Ireland would be obviously assistant, so there's a little bit of less risk there. Taking a head coach role in France obviously is him stepping out into the taking the reins himself, but he seems to have a good knack of the timing of some of these things fall pretty right for him. But I think if he could go in with France, and you can imagine if he did a short term, had a positive hit with them, there's every chance they'd go for him for a head coach, or for certainly a permanent involvement, because if France don't do well at this World Cup, I think Jack Brunel anyway, he's on borrowed time, so you'll see more change after the World Cup with them.
Good stuff, Quinny, thanks for that. You didn't manage to break anything there, but we all got.
Well, the point here is that he can't come back to me saying, "Well, you said this or you said that."
Yeah. No, Tony Lean said it.
Tony Lean said it, but look, it's out there. They have contacted him, and he is considering a situation. If there's something comes in paper on the table, I think it'd be a good move for them, to be sure.
No, definitely. All right, let's move on. Alan, good stuff. We'll talk later on in the week with that. We'll also get Roger's take on what he can and can't say himself. Great day of GAA action yesterday right around the country. We had the hurling semi-finals, and 21 of the 24 teams in the top 3 divisions had something to play for in the Football League. We'll get to James Horan in a minute, but first let's hear from the Meath manager, Andy McEntee.
Look at it. I suppose at this stage it's a relief as much as anything else. I mean, there's a certain amount of pressure building up all week. You just got to, we've done so much work. We just had to make sure we finished the job today. And I suppose after the first 10 minutes, people were starting to think, what's going on here? So it's really nice to get it across the line, and I think it's great for this group of players, because they've had a good bit of hardship now and a good few hard luck stories over the last number of years. Not just under my tenure, but I think it's good. It's good for these players, and it's good for the county. You can see what it means to people around here.
I just have to mention about Aidan O'Shea as well. Instrumental in 2 of those goals for Kevin McLaughlin. A fine performance for him today.
Yeah, I thought he did well. I thought Darren Cohn did very well as well on setting up some of the plays. So look, we're happy overall, and certainly we're making improvements in certain areas.
Is it a case now where you're in a final, go out and win it?
We honestly haven't talked about anything. We're going to try and we'll have a look at. We're boring like that. We'll have a look at what worked and what didn't, and we'll try and improve on some of the stuff, and we'll do that on Wednesday night, and then we'll do it try and do it at the weekend as well.
Yeah, that's James Horan, not giving too much away there. We've got Kieran Shannon with us this morning to parse through the league campaigns. Kieran, we may as well start with the 2 teams in the league final. How was Mayo's league campaign? Because they came in for some pretty strong, if off-the-wall criticism early on in the campaign, and then they had a brilliant second half to the league campaign. They seem to be in really good stead at the moment.
They do, Joe, because they've hit both boxes that you want in the league, where, just particularly where Mayo were going into the campaign or at the end of last campaign, they definitely needed to freshen up the squad. They needed to bring in and back younger players, and personified by Matthew Ruan and Fionn McDonough. They needed that, because although other players were maybe tried in recent years, were they truly ever backed? Whereas this year they have been backed, and yet key players have been rested, and then they're rejuvenated. And Kevin McLaughlin's a classic example. I think I had a stat after the Kildare game that Kevin had only 1 day off since 2011. A dead rubber game against Derry, I think, in 2014. He wasn't starting, as was the norm, for the first couple of rounds of the league, and then he comes gradually, is brought back into the team, and he gets 2, nearly 3 goals yesterday. And played the ball through for Matthew Ruan down in Tralee, so he's playing top football. So, you look at this Mayo team, they've been on the road since 2011, a lot of them, but, fresh blood, a new approach, and a key thing, between them and Dublin, you'd have to say, has been the bench, the finishers, the cavalry, and I think now what James has done is he's now got people vying for spots, and he's going to have Mayo are going to have one of the strongest benches in the country coming off, in the last 25 minutes of matches because of players have got game time. And so they've done that, and it was never an either or, which I sometimes thought people were looking at it. You can do that and get W's, and that's exactly what they've done. As you said, they actually started the league well the first 3 games. When you look back, and it was a huge win up in Oma. Had a lull in the middle. 2 teams who they have a bit of history with I'm sure would like to have got a win against them, but they weren't at full pace, and then finished off very well the last 2 weekends. So in a league final on merit, they haven't got it with 3 wins and a draw, 3 losses like they did in 2012. They've done it with 5 wins, so they're in a great position regardless of what happens next weekend.
You were making the point in your Irish Examiner column last week, Kieran, that the James Horan project this time around may not peak until next year. And the way I look at this Mayo team, with the age profile of some of the lads who've actually gone toe-to-toe with Dublin, I do wonder if this is the year, if this is their chance to win Sam Maguire.
Well, listen, absolutely. For some of them, it will, but the project will go on. And, Dublin are going to have a considerable turnover, even more so, I would contend. So, what I'm saying is, I just think the gap between Dublin and the rest going into this year was so vast it might take a second season. I think Dublin are coming back a little bit more, although they're still number 1. And what I'm just saying is that we are obsessed with the 5 in a row, and obviously, look, the sooner this gap finishes for Mayo themselves, the better. But I'm just saying that they're going to be in a very, very strong position in 2022, just as Kerry are. I don't see Dublin winning the 6 in a row, let's put it that way, or it's going to be something to pull off. But yeah, you're right. And look, last year was a gap year for both Kerry and particularly Mayo. Dublin, no, they didn't get the battle. We're making it seem because they're on the verge of a 5 in a row that they've had it all their own way. Both, Fitzmaurice is Kerry, and and Mayo under Horan and Rochford and Kennelly and 15 and Holmes. Like that run that they've had, they made sure that they brought war to Dublin. There was no war really for Dublin last year, but they're not going to get away with it this year, and they know that they know that Kerry and Mayo are coming, but what both squads have done is they've brought new players in, and Kerry, obviously Sean O'Shea has really been back, albeit he was introduced last year, but the likes of Darren Moynihan, obviously there's a new management. And I know Kerry, I thought we've had it before with Kerry, they won the league in 2017, and after the Munster final, it looked like it was going to, the serious challengers to Dublin didn't materialise after they were obviously beaten by Mayo. Last year again, there was a fall off, they got it wrong for the Galway game. But I do think this year they are also primed, and, the Dublin are going to probably have to go through the 2 of them, and that will not be easy.
Can we talk a little bit about Aidan O'Shea and his position and his role in the team at the moment? Like, it seems as if he's going to be a midfielder for this year, and that's been decided fairly early on, and it seems like he's responding to that.
Yeah, he's a very versatile footballer, and particularly with where the team is at the moment, with Tom Parsons and Shamie O'Shea, just on the way back, or obviously Tom still has a bit to go with the injury, but and obviously, he's backed Matty Ruan, which was huge. I remember seeing him in the under-21 semi-final against Dublin, and there were 3 or 4 down at a crucial stage early in the second half, and he just turned the game with his leadership and at crucial points in particular. And James has backed him and has identified too that I heard DB on the radio before the game on your own channel there yesterday saying about how it's, for him, he had Liam McHale, a fellow clubmate, to help usher him in. And Aidan's been great for Matty Ruan. And Aidan, I do see probably playing a lot of his football. But look, he's adaptable. Mayo management are adaptable now. And, there'll be certain games where they might have to, he'll possibly play minutes at 11 because, he would have played some great football there for James before, particularly in 2014. And he can play a little inside if the occasion demands it. But, yeah, the majority of his football will probably be in midfield this season.
And what about Kerry? Where are they at the moment? Because certainly they were the winners of the first section of the league in terms of the popular imagination and public opinion, particularly given the array of stars who weren't yet fit or weren't back playing with the team. A little bit of the heat has come off that hype, and then lo and behold, out comes David Clifford, and he looks even better than he was last year.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, they won 6 of their 7 games. Okay, they lost to Mayo, but that game was. It's very hard to go 7-0 in a league, and so they had one little respite against a very good team who were up for it, and travelled well to Kerry. So I think Kerry, look, both managements have been a little coy and about what they're about winning the league outright. The most important thing has been development and bringing through players, and obviously Kerry are trying to be, I suppose, more defensively solid. But yes, they've really backed Sean O'Shea. It's interesting that they have played O'Shea all through. He wasn't rested for a game or two despite his Sigerson commitments. But they're really saying, look, you're our man. And again, look, traditionally, there's a record of in the 90s and maybe early 90s, whoever lost the league, could do them some damage. That's not the case. If you look at in recent histories, the teams have responded and challenged, so both teams have, but they have a lot to gain for, it would be great for these Mayo players. People say there's only one thing they're missing. Well, there's kind of 2 things missing, and obviously, the Celtic Cross is the big one, but, you look at some of these players that they've had, and yet aren't automatic starters in this year. So, like, particularly, Lee Keegan wasn't involved yesterday, but, he's one of the best wing backs to ever play our game, and, even a league medal would be something that a player of such status should have in his CV. So it's a great opportunity for them. And look, Kerry would, now that they're up there back in Croke Park, they lost to Mayo the last time they were up there in 2017, and so that both teams will go for it on the day without being too bit of a setback if they come short. But particularly for Kerry, look, you're looking at Munster. Clare have done very well to stay in D2, but there's trouble against Kerry. Cork are obviously in difficulty, and Tip 2, both of them gone down. So, Kerry, this will be Kerry's biggest game before the Super 8. So, in terms of the calibre of opposition, so they look at it as a great opportunity, as will Mayo.
Yeah, Kerry have lost 3 consecutive games in all competitions in Croke Park now. So you do start to get concerns about the Galway comparisons down through the years about George is nodding, shaking his head at me. The question I wanted to ask you there, Kieran, about James Horan was, from your perspective, having worked in Mayo camps, is James Horan a different man to what he was first time he took over Mayo? Is his outlook on football a bit different?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, he's admitted as much. I think people maybe underestimate just how young or the lack of mileage he nearly had coming in, but he was exactly what Mayo needed, because he brought his expertise from business and everything, and his energy, and revolutionised Mayo in terms of putting structure and high performance setup in the environment. But James did great work with Ballintubber, bringing them to their first county in their 100 years after being an intermediate club only a few years. But he hadn't a whole lot of experience, and I think now obviously the experience that he would have gained in 4 years, reflecting it and then observing the game from a remove, and while chipping away on the club scene. So I think now he's aware of all the various things that the possibilities within the game, and yet certain principles from his previous regime are there. They're playing with a higher tempo than they would have in previous years, and so I think they're in a very good position, because look, he's got renewed energy from being out, and so although a lot of those players have been there for the decade, they've got a renewed sense of hope, because look, for as much as they've had the disappointments in September, they're back for more, because they just love doing it, and they know that there's something there, and I do see that these 2 teams will be, but Galway had a setback yesterday. Tyrone are coming good. Those 2 teams will be in the mix too, but I think Mayo now are looking strong for both this year, and the great thing for them, it's not boom or bust, because you can see a 2020-21 team just getting that balance right. Just as Gavin has done it, you win and develop, and that's I think Mayo have got that mix right, and so are Kerry.
A quick question for you before we talk some basketball. You live in Clare but are from Cork, and has that experience been, I'm sure?
Yeah, I mean, I've covered the last 2 of the last 3 league campaigns. I've covered that fixture, and they've been very telling. This is no fluke. That Clare have now beaten Cork the last 3 years. So, what was huge for Clare yesterday? You've had a dynamic in Munster, whereby obviously Kerry have won every Munster from 2013 on, but you've had since then, in recent years, where Clare have tended to beat Cork. Cork have tended to beat Tip, albeit 2016 the year Tip got to the All-Ireland semi-final, they beat Cork. And then Tip have tended to beat Clare, okay? And it looked like it was going to be that way in Thurles yesterday, but the fact that Clare came back and beat Tip, relegated them, and along with it, Cork, because of the head-to-head fixture. And then it's massive for Clare football to be yet again in Division 2, and it just underlines what a phenomenal job Colin Collins has done. For Cork, it's a big blow for the county in terms. It was coming, you could say. What I would say is, midway through that league campaign, I did wonder, was the possibility of Ronan McCarthy's status under threat for even going into the championship? But I think, to be fair to him and the players, they've won 2 of their last 3 games, and 2 of them have been on the road in Tip, albeit they're not having the best campaign, but Donaghy lost down there. And then to win up in Armagh, I know Armagh were the one team in the division that didn't have anything to play for yesterday, but it was still a good win. And I know there's going to be a lot of brickbats thrown at them, but that's because of a general malaise over the last 4 or 5 years. But actually, within this cycle of the team itself, they're actually on a bit of an upward trajectory of sorts, albeit, just by the way it's set up, Cork people would fear for how another Munster final at home would work out, with Kerry coming over the hill. But it wouldn't surprise me if Cork, won their last 12 game. Because we've had this. If you look at the history of the league, there's always been one team that's maybe been relegated, who's gone on to reach the last day. Last year we had it with Kildare. It wouldn't surprise me if that emerged. But by the same token, are Cork anywhere near? We're talking there about league finals. Yeah. It used to be just a given Cork were in them. The way we've taken it for Dublin, getting to them, they're a long way off that. So yesterday just summed up the malaise that has been post 2012.
I do want to ask you about the basketball and the incredible end to the season. We've obviously been emotionally invested in it here, as Kieran Donaghy has talked to us week after week about what's been going on. But the way that the season telescoped down to the final 3 games and then the final back-to-back games between Tralee and Marion. For anybody who missed this, on Saturday evening, Tralee played Marion in Dublin. The game goes to overtime, and Tralee needed to win both the games effectively to guarantee themselves the title, and they managed to dig out. I think Saturday night's kind of the
Saturday night was unreal. I still got my stamp from going into the gym in Belfield, and it's nearly like the GPO Munster 78 stuff, because it was incredible. I mean, I've seen Donaghy do this before, 2008 with the Tigers, as they were then. They were playing Leicester. There were a couple of Americans down, Bosman injured, etc. And against the rockstar Leicester team, they somehow won. And I remember Pat Price having the image of them down in UL of Donaghy with 40 seconds to go after a hustle play, puking over the advertising horde, and he said, "Talk about giving it your all, even breakfast." And Price is now coaching them with the Warriors, and yesterday eclipsed even that Limerick 08 or Limerick 14. What Kerry was what he's all about. I mean, but because it's who he's brought with him. I mean, as I was writing for the paper this morning, St Brendan's were basically a pub team, a county league team in Kerry 3.5 years ago. Fergal and Darren O'Sullivan, two cousins. They play golf in the summer, a bit of basketball in the winter. They're playing just County League in Kerry. There's an intermediate cup set up, and they end up winning it. Donaghy comes back as part of his rehab from losing the 2015 final as captain for Kerry. And all of a sudden, the town is galvanised. They know that there's a basketball tradition in the town. Why don't we bring all the clubs together and form a team? Fair play to Basketball Ireland. They didn't put them in the first division, they put them right into the Super League. And so, and then, you know, they're against Marion, these teams that are one of these teams that have been vying in national finals, you know, as their norm for the last 4 or 5 years. And all of a sudden they're going up against the Conor Meanies, the Leighton Baines, and, you know, Mike Garrows, and Paul Dick, the best point guard in the country, is fouled out. Bogdan Bogdanovic, their Bosman, rides on the floor. Keith Jumper, their American, is fouled out, and they still pull it off. You know, they still pull it off. Owen Quigley, a homegrown guy who would have won championships with Limerick, has been the X factor all year. But you have to say a lot of it has been just the sheer force of will and personality of Donaghy has galvanised them and brought it all together. But the thing was, he's lifted a whole town, and you know what the O'Sullivans there. You know, these guys are in their late 20s. Fergal must be over 30 at this point. And like yesterday, he scored 22 points, taking, you know, the likes of Barry Drum off the dribble, you know, doing spin moves, reverse layups, as well as hitting threes in front of his home people. It's phenomenal. Like I grew up, obviously, in Cork in the 80s. I was queuing with my own children yesterday. And it was like being back in the Hall and Stadium back in the day, or it's like Ballina in the 90s. And I know some people, you know, feel nearly these comparisons. What Tralee have done, though, is they've built on that tradition. They've rejuvenated their own tradition in the town, you know, within the county with Kerry in the 80s, and it's just magic, and fair play to them. They won their last 10 games, so, you know, phenomenal story.
Yeah, incredible story. Great stuff, Kieran. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Okay, sounds good.
Kieran Shannon, you can read his stuff in the Irish Examiner. You can follow him on Twitter as well. Competition time, we've got 2 tickets for Ireland against Georgia to give away. If you want to go and watch the football, if you want to go and watch the protest, who knows? But it's going to be an interesting, eventful evening, no matter what happens on and off the field. Just share this morning's OTBAM on whatever stream you're watching at #OTBAM and tell us who was Ireland's top goal scorer in their 2002 World Cup qualifying campaign. He may be on the bench for the game tomorrow night. In fact, he definitely is. All right. He is. He's sitting on the bench. He's not? For the qualifying campaign? All right, okay. So it's not Robbie Keane. Wow. I've ruined the competition. But, okay, well, I haven't. Do you know the answer?
I would have definitely said Robbie Keane.
Yeah, me too. Right, Jesus. Well, I'm glad I actually told you that it's not Robbie Keane, because otherwise everybody would have got the entry wrong. Darren Cleary's in with the sports news now, but first, here's Tommy Walsh about how this year's hurling league final is shaping up. In response to the person who's given out about us ignoring Waterford, we weren't. We were just talking about Joe Canning earlier. We can do both.
What kind of final do you think now we can look forward to?
I think we'll look forward to a fabulous final and a really outstanding, I'd say, attacking final, because I think when the two teams are let go at it, they will go at it, and I think we'll see a high scoring. I think it was 118 to 19 points the second game. I think we'll see definitely a high scoring 20s in the final, and really fit, really strong teams, and probably the two form teams really at the moment are in the final and well deserved of it. And I think the most important thing is both of them will be going hung-ho for this national title.
Who's going to win it?
It's a bit too early to. I'll have to study the forms like Cheltenham. So I'll have to study the form. It's probably too early to say just yet. We'll have to see who comes out of it and what kind of injuries came out with today, and we'll know more later on the week.
Well, there's Tommy Walsh sitting on the fence here in Nolan Park.
First time ever. We'll get him back before the final and let you know exactly when he's done his homework what's going to go on in that one. Darren, how are you?
Good morning, Ger.
How do you feel about the Kerry lads all talking up Mayo, talking down their own chances?
Well, Owen got aroused by the performance of David Clifford, so I don't think he's talking down anything. He was so excited by it.
I'm not going to argue with that. Not going to, you're bang on the money there. How does it feel to be watching from afar? as your home ground is infiltrated by muck savages?
Our home ground. Yeah, look, it was a disappointing league campaign. I think it probably was shaping up that way. I thought it would have got better as it went on. There were one or two instances that were really disappointing. The manner, the goals they conceded. The Mayo game was probably a bit of a false dawn, where it looked like that we turned a bit of a corner. But Mayo were just really poor that night, and Dublin were relatively okay. It's not great. It'll maybe give the rest of the country that bit of hope that Dublin are not infallible and beatable, but I would imagine they'll improve a lot over the next couple of weeks when they go back to their clubs.
What is that the message you've been told to get out?
That's the message I've been told to get out.
Back to the clubs, club month. Mostly the players for the month of April.
It's funny whenever Tommy's trying to talk to Darren in his earpiece, like, why isn't Darren listening to me?
We've great respect for everyone, Owen. We have a lot of respect for Kerry. They're motoring really well, and Mayo, great footballing tradition, brilliant heritage, and will be very difficult to beat.
Good goalkeeper, great full back line. That half back line really shaping up that midfield as good as anything that you'd ever seen. New blood in the half forward line all the way through to the Stoves bench. There's 21 lads there that can make an impact in the game.
My favourite Jim Gavin, I think, boring press conference moment where he was going the Monaghan lineup, 1 to 15 as he does, as well as the subs, and he just literally hit autopilot and started talking about how great a midfielder Malachy Clerkin was.
Did he say that? Oh, wow.
He did, and everyone else was already tuned out, so no one realised until afterwards when they listened back, wait a minute, he said Malachy Clerkin. No one was listening to him at the time. An official complaint has been lodged with the Office of the Director of Corporate Enforcement about the €100,000 loan that John Delaney gave to the FAI. TD Noel Rock has raised concerns about what he has described as undisclosed issues around expenditure and balance sheet issues at the FAI. In a statement last week, the FAI said they had written to the ODCE offering clarification on the transaction. The loan was not noted in the association's annual accounts and was repaid to Delaney a few months later. On Saturday, the FAI announced that he was stepping down as CEO of the organisation to take up a newly created role as Executive Vice President, where the salary is believed to be in the region of €120,000 per annum. Fergus O'Dowd is the chairman of the Oireachtas Committee on Sport. The FAI say Delaney will be part of the delegation set to attend the meeting next month, and O'Dowd says there are serious questions to answer.
I'm deeply concerned. I think this is a key moment in our country in terms of sport, and particularly in terms of soccer. And, significant changes clearly have occurred over the last weekend, but we don't know the import of them. Has one person seems to have changed one position for one with significant other additional or same powers. But the public need the answers. They need clarity, and, we'll see what comes out. But I think most of all, they want real change.
He was speaking to News Talk Breakfast. There's more from Fergus O'Dowd on the website offtheball.com shortly. Now, Mick McCarthy understands fans' frustrations over the Republic of Ireland's unconvincing win over Gibraltar last weekend. The boys in green return to the training pitch in Abbottstown later as attention turns to the next game against Georgia tomorrow night. McCarthy admits one fan has already lost faith in him.
No, the bloke that kept telling me I was getting sacked in the morning and I was a wanker, he was particularly annoying, but apart from that, not really. I didn't realise he knew me that well, to be quite honest. This was set up for it. This was absolutely set up for an upset tonight, this. Playing under plastic, blowing a gale, a team that have been together and done all right and got some decent players. It was set up for that. I said that to the players beforehand. I said, no, we can only stop it. And what I did say to him, I said, I said to the staff, and I didn't make a fuss of it to the players. You turn up, you win, you get 3 points, and then you can whinge all you want about the stuff. But I'm not inclined to, because we'll play better. We'll play better and lose, probably.
The present may be tense, but the future of Irish football looks bright at least. The Republic of Ireland under-21s made a winning start to their European Championship qualifying campaign. Stephen Kenny's Chargers beat Luxembourg 3-0 at the Tallaght Stadium last night. The perfect start for them. In Gaelic games, the Limerick manager John Kiley says the players have proved their doubters wrong so far. They will contest the first major piece of silverware on offer this season. When they meet Waterford in the Allianz League final, the Munster men secured their spot in the decider by beating Dublin on a scoreline of 119 to 116. Limerick have won 10 of their last 11 outings in league and championship. The only blot on their copybook was a loss to Cork in February. Kiley admits he's thrilled to be in the final because they are still a long way off their best.
We have a load of work still to do, we know that. But I can't fault them for their application and their energy in terms of engaging with what we've been doing with them over the last 4 months, and all credit to them. I'm delighted to see them back in Croke Park and back in the national final again, and again it's a great way for us now to maybe tie up our preparations at this end of the club month. We know we'll come back at the other side of the club month and do 3-4 weeks work at that side. But for us to sign off in the league, I think it's something to look forward to next weekend.
Tommy Walsh described Cian Lynch's. There were audible gasps from everybody at the game yesterday when he caught a ball like a claw.
A claw, yeah. I heard Tommy's. It was probably his halftime report. It was just. He was so excited by that catch.
It was like,
it brought him so much energy and life. He was like, it's not been the greatest game, bit of a sweeper, but then this claw just brought everyone to their feet. I think he said it was worth the admission price alone. I saw it back on one of I think the GAA or RT tweet out their live highlights now, and it was really, really good. Great claw. Mayo will contest the Alliance League Division 1 final for the first time in 7 years this season. They defeated 14-man Monaghan at McHale Park by 3-15 to 118. Manager James Horan is pretty impressed.
Delighted to get into a final. It's great. Delighted to have seen so many players, and delighted that some elements of our game are in really good shape. Obviously, there's elements of our game that are not as good as we need them to be, so we'll work on those. But overall, of course, I have to be happy with the league campaign and looking forward to a final.
From an attacking perspective, though, you must be really happy.
Yeah, we've been working a lot on certain things, and some of them are coming off. But I thought defensively today we were lucky in the first half to be up, and we're lucky not to be maybe a couple of goals down. David Clark put off an amazing save very early in the game that gave us a bit of a lift, and then Conor McManus was through on another day. A ref might have given that, so we got the rub of the green that way. So we'll take it. But look, we're absolutely delighted. Some players coming through, and we'll look forward to Wednesday night.
Who are you most fearing at the moment, Darren?
Kerry. It'd have to be Kerry, wouldn't it?
Wrong answer.
Because losing to them would be like people like him goading Dublin fans for the rest of their lives.
Kerry don't goad, Ger. I don't know where you're getting this nonsense from.
No, it's their weird, it's the self-expectations. That's the biggest problem with Kerry. It's the fact that their demands are so high in-house. They really don't give a shite about the rest of the country, but if things aren't going well in their parish, I say it's rough to be a Kerry man when they're not winning.
Exactly. Terrible losers, good winners. I don't know where you're getting this goading from.
Yeah, they're not bad winners.
Give me one example. You talk a lot of nonsense, but that's actually the most nonsensical thing you've ever said.
Mayo were bad winners.
Mayo were very bad winners.
Mayo were very hard to avoid.
Don't get us mixed up. Just because we're all the same to you people inside the pale doesn't mean you can just paint us all with the one brush.
And so in terms of pure footballing, you actually believe Kerry are further down the line than Mayo?
Oh yeah, a lot further down the line. I think there's shades of Kerry in the way that Dublin were post that Donegal defeat, in that they've strengthened defensively. They look like they're really well organised defensively, and they have an ability to marry both now. They look probably the most complete package in the country so far this year, I think.
I listened back to the Diarmuid McConnelly interview that the Hill 16 podcast did. I just hadn't actually ever sat down and listened to the whole thing, so I was listening to it yesterday, and it's bizarre because it's like the kind of Christmas 2017, and at the end of it they're like, look, even if you never play another game for Dublin, you're going to be a legend. I was like, how ridiculous that is, because he was like, you're just 30 at this stage, just entering your peak. Is there a possibility that it's never going to happen?
That he won't come back?
Yeah, it kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
I've probably felt that way for a few months. I've kind of given up on it because I think that for whatever reason, the joy just isn't there anymore for him to be the most scrutinised player in the country. I mean, he's been talked about at length, even though he hasn't kicked football for Dublin in the best part of 2 years. Since he's played one league game in 2 years. I don't think we'll see him again. I think he's got different things going on in his life. I would love him to come back because I still think his natural ability, the gift of football that he has, it's unrivaled. I don't think there's anyone in the country that has what he has.
That point that was made on the show last week by Enda McGinley about Luna, there was just a little bit of crisis in the Tyrone game. There was nobody who you can just go, right, we're going to get the ball to this player and he will take some responsibility for something, and that's what we're going to do for the next 5-10 minutes, just to calm everybody down, get him on the ball for the next 5-10 minutes, even if it's come deep, whatever, and it'll be like, okay, well, Conley's on the ball, everything's grand. The Dubs don't quite have that.
No.
Their system is the thing, and if the system is being overcome or overwhelmed, what do you look for at that point? And maybe the whole point of having an individual is wrong, and maybe the thought process is like maybe our paradigm in thinking, well, if your system is broken, you need an individual to stand up, but like you need a plan B when plan A is getting overwhelmed.
You need the chaos, the ability for someone to think outside the box and do something different, because the problem with the process is once it's exposed and once it fails to work, I'm not sure there's a way to course correct in game. And I know Dublin fans always go back to that semi-final against Donegal where it just stopped working, and no matter what they did, they trusted the process on that day, and it didn't serve them well because they were beaten.
He talked about that actually. He's unbelievably kind of John Giles-esque photographic recall for details, and we just went for goals too early, which was definitely something we learned that day and took into in future games. Don't go for goals too early. Just keep the scoreboard ticking over, which they didn't do, because people forget about that first half. Like himself and Paul Flynn were kicking points from the 40 and outside the 40 and the touchline. Like they had scored some of the best points you're ever.
It looked like it was over. It looked like they were home and host. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for Connolly is the burden he brings on the opposition. Like if you're playing against Dublin and they bring on Conor McHugh or they bring on Owen O'Gara, you're going to be able to mark them.
Lee Keegan doesn't have to go one-on-one with him.
Yeah,
you're not taking the best attacking force out.
Exactly, but when Connolly comes and stands beside you, it just ruffles everything, it unsettles everyone. And I don't think that they have that presence in the forwards anymore. I don't think there's one player in the forwards that has the same presence that he would.
No, in fairness, because he's the best player in the country. So, all right, Darren, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. So DH says Ireland were absolutely awful. Maybe Rice made the right decision. James Kennedy says even Spain would have been awful in that game. The judgment on the team should start after tomorrow's match. I mean, okay, whatever. Adrian McGrath says, how did it not work with Doherty? We were utterly devoid of ideas when Brady came on for him and created nothing down both wings instead of just the left wing. And Kevin Kane says, with Stevens and Doherty playing great football as wing-back for their respective clubs, we are perfectly suited to play 3-5-2. Also, our wingers aren't good enough, which pushes the case even more. McLean and Maguire should be dropped.
The 3-5-2 thing is a two-way street, though. You're then moving Seamus Coleman into the right of a 3. And that is a big problem.
Doesn't work, yeah.
That's a big problem.
I don't think he has the pace or positional awareness for it.
Don't think so either.
You could try it. I mean, you can't really. We could have tried it against Gibraltar.
Georgia. You can't try it against Gibraltar, clearly.
No.
Because he tried to set up a way that was tactically the way he wanted to play, and it didn't work.
I would agree. I mean, let's hear some post-match reaction from Gibraltar. Nathan caught up with Darren Randolph, Shane Duffy, Seanie Maguire, and the captain, Seamus Coleman.
Coming here and getting away with 3 points was important. Obviously we would have liked it to be a little bit better or maybe more goals, but as you can see even now the wind is, but look, I don't want to make excuses. It was the same for both teams and the pitch was the same for both teams, but it was a difficult game.
The conditions were obviously absolutely crazy. Have you ever played in anything like that?
Probably underage, just about Donaghy somewhere up about Guido or something like that on a Sunday morning, but no, as I said, it was the same for both teams, so I don't want to maybe look for excuses. It was tough, but same for both teams, and you know, we got over the line. We definitely would have liked it to be more comfortable. I'm not going to try and butter it up any different.
I'm not making excuses, because obviously they had to play the conditions as well, and it was one of the worst I've played in, to be honest. So probably didn't look like that on the telly or stuff like that, but job done, really. Obviously we're a little bit disappointed that we didn't play a little bit better and score a few more goals, but 3 points and get out of here.
In the dressing room afterwards, you just go, 3 points, job done, move on to Georgia, or was there a bit of disappointment that you didn't take more control of the game and gave Gibraltar a chance in those final stages?
No, we came here to get the win, and that's what we did. You know, people can say what they want, but to say from the couch or looking on, you know, we want to come here and get the win, which we did. It won't matter come the end of the group when we qualify.
How have you enjoyed the past week under Mick?
Yeah, it's been good, very good. It's been we had actually great weeks training in the build up to the game. So everyone's been in high spirits, and we got off to a good start.
To identify at this early stage why the performance maybe wasn't at the level you wanted.
Very early for a negative question, but no, look, we came here, tough game. We knew it was going to be tough. Getting out here with 3 points, we know all the fans, we wanted to put on a better performance, but Tuesday night we need to make sure that we do that.
Do you come off the pitch then happy that you got your first competitive start, or frustrated that you maybe weren't able to make the impact you wanted?
More so an impact that that I should be setting myself. Obviously it's great to start from a country for first competitive start. It's a great honour for myself and for my family and stuff, but I thought it could have been a game where I could have saw myself getting my first goal, but it wasn't meant to be. I'm sure hopefully there'll be a chance to get that first goal Tuesday night. I particularly didn't really get many sniffs tonight, so I'm not the type of player that'll dwell on it too much. I'll gain confidence from picking up a win today and just moving on.
Do you get a sense of the goodwill that's there towards you from the Ireland fans? I think everyone particularly identifies with you coming straight from the League of Ireland. They've been waiting for you to get your chance for quite a while. We're calling for it for quite a while. Is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think obviously people within Ireland want me to do well because I've come from the League of Ireland and then pushed on at Preston. Look, it's great to put in the green jersey and and play for your country out here and on the biggest stage in front of the best fans in the world. As I said, they particularly didn't play well or anywhere near our best, and they were singing from the first to the last, and that's something that can make a real difference when in a frustrating game like today. And I've seen obviously 40,000 tickets have been already sold for the game Tuesday, so obviously winning today can hopefully bring a full house Tuesday night.
Yeah, I'd say we'll be close enough. I don't know how many tickets are sold. I don't know what it's going to be like. Will it be close enough to full house?
Hard to tell, isn't it? Like under the previous management, you would have said probably not, and it'd be fairly easy to get tickets on today. New management, new era, and all that. Closer to a sellout, I would imagine.
Robbie Keane on the bench, who of course wasn't the top scorer in the 2002 World Cup qualifying campaign.
Well, he's got his work cut out for him now, doesn't he, over the next couple of months, if we're going to be stuck for attacking options up front to try and get something a little bit more from the likes of McGoldrick and Shawnee Maguire up front. Like, what is Robbie Keane going to do on a one-to-one basis? I'm sure it'll become a bit clearer over the next few months. It seemed that Terry Connor actually was in charge of a lot of the attacking movement last week from a couple of the suggestions on the training park, but I'm sure Keane's influence will grow over time.
Yeah, all right. I think we've got Nathan with us this morning, do we?
Yeah, morning, lads.
How are you doing?
Very well.
An uneventful trip to Gibraltar. You didn't get your picture of John Delaney under the VIP exit out first. Neil O'Riordan beat you to the punch.
I was busy working. We were on air at the time, so I was rushing back to see was there any breaking news. That was about half an hour before kickoff in the game.
Yeah.
When word started to filter through that something was pretty seismic was maybe about to happen behind the scenes regarding John Delaney. Nobody quite knew what it was. Was he potentially even going to resign as CEO of the FAI? So obviously we set off in chase of John Delaney, and I found him just below that VIP exit sign. He had no comment to make at that stage, and it was just a bizarre evening for a whole manner of reasons, from the game on the pitch and the hurricane force conditions and the plastic pitch and Ireland struggling to get over the line, to, for a lot of the second half, keeping an eye on the director's box just to our right hand side. And was John Delaney there? He was a bit slow to come back for the second half. He was on the phone a lot. He was up and he was down. And what was going on is, as again word came through that there was going to be a statement later that evening on what exactly would be in it. So it was yet another one of those remarkable, strange FAI days that seem to crop up every couple of years.
This is definitely right up there. Like, I mean, it's not quite Saipan, but it's not like it's right next to it in terms of what's going on. Because
is it a corporate Saipan?
It feels a little bit like that. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that you would issue a statement at the time that you did, unless there was something else happening to force your hand. It doesn't make any sense to make these changes to the FAI's governance now in the rushed manner in which they've been made, unless there is something else forcing your hand, which we don't yet know about, which hasn't yet been established or hasn't been made public. So there is more to this story to come.
And also that wasn't acknowledged in any way in this 1,800-word statement. You're right, this is a seismic change at the top of Irish football. John Delaney has been the CEO for the last 14 years. We know the criticism that has been there in recent times. People wanted him to leave that role, and he's done that into this newly created role of executive vice president that just popped up out of nowhere. That this review of governance has been going on for the last 6 or 7 weeks, and for some reason the decision had to be made while a good chunk of the board are in Gibraltar on a Saturday night, that this is the exact moment that they need to make this change, with no reference in those 18 words to any of the revelations that have come out over the past week. No clarity, no further answers to any of the questions that are being raised. It is all bizarre. It maybe does work from a PR point of view in that it moves the conversation on a little bit. Now, whether it will work, only time will tell. But a lot of the conversations this morning are obviously about how much John Delaney is going to be paid, what exactly his new role is, who the new CEO will be, what they will be paid. does the new CEO deserve to be paid 360 grand a year when, on the face of it, it seems that it's a very diminished role. It's not going to carry an awful lot of the same responsibilities that John Delaney had. So these are a lot of the questions that have been asked now regarding the governance side, whereas are people still asking, what about the 100 grand bridging loan? We still haven't got all the answers to that. Maybe when they go in front of the Oireachtas committee, which John Delaney, it seems, is still going to lead, we might get some of those answers. But it feels as though we're putting an awful lot on an Oireachtas committee that massively disappointed the last time John Delaney went in front of them.
And has never, ever lived up to its requirements as a government body. Let's park the criticism of them for a minute, because I actually think that the questions to the FAI shouldn't stop just because they say this new role is being created. Like it's actually, I would say, still our role in the media to continue asking these questions in the meantime, and to keep that pressure up for the type of transparency which has plainly not been in evidence. If the FAI were undergoing root and branch examination of their own corporate governance, they could have made that public when that was happening. They could have said, well, look, we actually believe that there is a better structure for us into the future. It may involve a separation of powers from the current role that we have, where the chief executive is also heavily involved with UEFA business while at the same time supposed to be running the grassroots of Irish football. If we split these two roles into somebody we're looking after Europe and somebody looking after the grassroots, this is something that we're considering. You put that out there, the consultation process. This guy comes over from the FA, who also apparently worked for the RFU and does his bit of work. But Sport Ireland have said, confirmed to the Examiner today, they knew nothing about this corporate governance review, which apparently had already been completed to the point where it was ratified by the board of the FAI just on Friday/Saturday. That's still a little bit unclear in my mind exactly how that happened, but everything is too rushed. This just does not pass the smell test of this is a well planned out and it's on our terms a strategy. It just does not work like
absolutely. It's just over a week ago that anybody outside of the FAI found out about this review. And the only reason it came out was in a response to John Delaney taking out an injunction against the Sunday Times to try and stop this story about the 100,000 loan coming out. That is the only reason this governance review was made public. And we're to believe that within a week of the FAI deciding to make that public, that they convened a board meeting in Gibraltar to act out on it, that less than a week later, John Delaney is no longer the CEO of the FAI. It doesn't stack up. The timeline doesn't stack up when the FAI seem to be suggesting that it has got nothing to do with all these revelations of the past week. It's just too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. And so I think those questions will have to continue to be asked of the FAI. Of their now new interim CEO, she can come out and start answering these questions and say, look, I'm in charge now. It's my job to find out exactly what did happen. I will be reporting directly to the board, and I will be examining everything that's happened under the previous regime. I mean, that's exactly what John Delaney did when he came in. He was, look, it's a new era of openness and transparency. Obviously, some of that transparency just doesn't seem to have been followed through. So, and I think there's a very important role for Sport Ireland to play here, for the Minister to play. The public money will stop unless we get full transparency, and that includes the governance of the organisation. That includes you holding yourself to account in the way that you're supposed to have done in terms of the term limits for members of the board and all the boring stuff that sports administration is supposed to do and should never actually be an issue for the public, because it's really easy to do it properly.
Do you believe Sport Ireland have the balls to do that? Do you believe Shane Ross has the balls to do that, to come out to the FAI that unless we get this set criteria followed in terms of transparency, that we are going to stop funding? There's been little to suggest so far that they do.
Well, the thing is, it's in the open now, so I mean, it's a win for any politician who actually wants to go and take this ball and run with it, no?
You would hope so, and you would hope that, as you say, Ger, I think there's a huge onus on the media to keep this story going, but that this is quite a legal issue now in ways. There's a complaint in with the Director of Corporate Enforcement. Obviously, Shane Ross and Sport Ireland seem to be in the dark about an awful lot of things that are going on here. From we've had a massive reorganisation at the top of a national governing body that they knew nothing of until a statement was released on Saturday night. This new role has been created worth almost 100 grand a year in an association that less than 2 years ago had to take out bridging loans because they had cash flow problems. Like, how does this stack up in a tax in a company, in an organisation that is supported by the taxpayer? It quite simply doesn't. But it's happening, and it's happening right now. And who is going to step in and ask those appropriate questions and hold them to account?
Nathan, when it comes to John Delaney's UEFA role, like as we say, there's still a lot more questions to ask here before we actually get clarity, but there has been some suggestion that this may allow him to focus a bit more of his time on his role with UEFA at the moment. Granted, he's only been in the role a relatively short amount of time. Do we know what is the interest of his role with UEFA from an Irish perspective? Is it beneficial from an FAI's perspective to have a representative so well involved with UEFA?
You would have to imagine it's hugely beneficial, because UEFA is where the vast majority of the FAI's money is coming from right now. There was mentioned in that statement that they're renegotiating again the TV rights deal that has got the FAI out of a massive hole because they're benefiting from all the bigger countries across Europe. There's no doubt that the FAI having a strong voice in UEFA can only be a good thing. John Delaney is obviously going to remain that strong voice because they sort of changed the system in UEFA a few years back to make sure it wasn't an old boys club anymore, and it needs to be a CEO or a president or a vice president that remains on these executive councils like John Delaney is. So he's going to keep that, and it was made clear that he's going to stay very much involved and leading the charge with UEFA, with FIFA, with any bids that are coming through with the Aviva Stadium. And again, that raises questions about the new CEO and how much power they're going to actually have. That's the good stuff. That's the sort of stuff that attracts a real high caliber applicant, that you can look and be ambitious and think, well, I can get involved with UEFA. I can deal with FIFA. I can run the Aviva Stadium. I can take charge of the debt. Like, these are the things that a high caliber candidate is going to want to get involved in. If you're saying, well, actually, that's John Delaney's gig, you can look after the League of Ireland and you can look after the FAI staff, but really don't think you're going to get any of those nice trips to Neon because, hey, that's already done.
Yeah, that's my job. It's literally my job, which I'm getting paid for by them and by the FAI at the same time. But anyway, we'll come back to that, because obviously there's plenty of time for that to unfold and to unravel. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe this is the only week that we're ever actually going to get to talk about it. But I do want to ask you about the under-21s, because the Stephen Kenny era is up and running properly. You're at this game. What was the story?
Yeah, I thought they were quite impressive. Luxembourg weren't as bad as you might have expected. They had some decent results, and they just sort of sat back and made it difficult. But it was clear that Stephen Kenny had gone out and given them the instruction that they wanted to keep possession of the ball, and they haven't had a huge amount of time in training, but there were definite signs of improvement. I saw a lot of the under-21s under Noel King, and it was just an absolute mess. An absolute mess. There was no sign that they'd done anything on the training pitch, but whereas the back four were very composed. Conor Masterson, I thought, who with Liverpool was outstanding. It was the game that suited him because Luxembourg sat back, so he had plenty of time in possession of the ball. He's got a brilliant range of passing. Just didn't look flustered ever, no matter what happened, except one occasion he got a yellow card for a rash challenge, but generally he controlled the show. Connor Coventry, who is an interesting player, played in the middle of midfield, sort of as the pivot. He got on the ball more than anybody else, didn't really make use of it. He's a West Ham midfielder. He's been on the bench a couple of times recently, and he was born in England. What could possibly go wrong? So Connor Coventry is one of the few English-born players involved. The guys who impressed, Adam Ida, obviously up front, got a couple of goals. Looks good, big, strong, physical player who can hold on to the ball. Sort of what Shawnee Maguire was talking about there of his problem is Maguire needs space in behind, which against lesser teams you're not going to get. There was none really for Ireland last night, but Ida was able to get himself involved. He was strong, bring the midfielders into it. And the way they were set up, there was wingers just off him. There was Neil Ferrugia making runs from deep. And Ida looks an absolute talent. He's only 18 years of age. He's with Norwich. He's scoring a lot of goals at under 23 level. And when you look at what Wales are doing at the moment and the way they fast-track these young players, I'm not saying Adam Ida should be starting for the senior team, but you'd wonder, do you just get these guys involved? Do you just want that bit of freshness, bit of energy? And that it's not that big a gap. And I don't think it will be over the next few years. But you might have seen the first goal was a header from a corner kick for Ida. It was a shame, really, because leading up to that corner kick, Ireland had a passage of about 40 passes where they just played it around, were patient, dragged it out. Masterson sent this crossfield ball, a little injection of pace, and the cross into the area is cut out for the corner. They score from the resulting corner kick. But there was just a good buzz around Tala as well yesterday. I'm sure people saw this nice moment when Jason Malumphy was coming off and Stephen Kenny grabs him and turns him to the crowd and says, basically, give it up for this guy. Look what this guy's done. And everyone goes crazy for it because well, he was exceptional, almost scored, hit the crossbar, but also has had this horrible time with injury. So there's obviously a huge amount of goodwill. It's the first match. They took this match on just to have a game. Most sides aren't starting their qualifiers till September, but they go off to the Toulon tournament now where they're going to be really tested. All the European countries are going to be there. They'll have 2 or 3 weeks together, and we might finally, by the end of that, I think we'll get a good sense of what Stephen Kenny has from them.
All right, very, very briefly, we're completely out of time. You've been really good. Give me a score for the Ireland-Georgia game tomorrow.
I don't know. I think it's these 2 games. I think you just want 6 points. I would take, after the performance on Saturday, I would take a 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, but
100%.
What you would take and what's likely to happen? Do you give Georgia like some massive price for this game? And off air, a few of our colleagues have been speculating about the fact that maybe Georgia might win this game.
Well, they're going to be a pain in the ass to play against. We saw that for Switzerland, even at home. I just think at home, the buzz that's around Mick McCarthy, there's going to be a big crowd. They're saying over 40,000. That surely Ireland will have enough. If not, you don't want to be negative right at the start. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster if they don't take 6 points from these 2 games.
Good stuff.
No need to panic.
No need to panic. Bit early for a negative question, as Seamus Coleman told you. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, tough crowd. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right.
Wednesday morning we'll be speaking to Nathan again about the permutations of the Nations League that allow us to get a playoff.
Emmet Bolton was talking with Owen on Saturday's Off the Ball campaign. He has not been impressed by Kildare's league campaign. This was before they had their asses handed to them by Donaghy. Have a look.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, when you get, Brendan will tell you as a player, when you get across the white line, you're not playing for your manager, you're playing for the guys around you, you're playing for the jersey, and you're playing for all the hard work that you put in the 9 months previous. But, I mean, in terms of the tackling and the intensity and that type of stuff that would have been synonymous with Kildare maybe the 6 or 7 years beforehand, under Kieran McEntee and that type of thing, it was because at training that's how they train to play. Whereas maybe the game has just gone too scientific at the minute, and from the outside looking in, over the years Kildare would have always seemed to be soft and would have played a hand passing game and that type of stuff. Whereas I don't think they're being trained to the level that they need to be trained at the minute, in terms of the last 5-10 minutes of a game. You're 2 points down, you're a point up, you're level, you have to go to a dark place. You can revert back to a training that, with 10 minutes to go in a training session, you said, I can't, I'm going to die here, I'm not going to be able to finish this session. Whereas I just think that they're not being trained hard enough. I don't know if they believe in this. I don't actually know the structure that they're playing, to be totally honest with you. O'Doyle dropped back as a sweeper last year. He's not playing as a sweeper this year, thank God, because he's really good going forward. But I just don't see any real cohesion in the top 6. I mean, there's no defensive coach there at the minute. I think that's an area that they really do need to improve on, because if they do get that type of coaching, they're all good tacklers, they're all good defenders. They're just not being coached at that level at the minute. I don't think. But if they can do something in the gap between the end of the league and the championship, they have the ability to challenge the top 5, the top 6 teams in the country, because the ability is there. But I just don't think that they're training to the level required at the minute. They're certainly not performing to it, but there is a lot more in that group, and I think if something changes, you'll see a different Kildare team in the summer.
If something changes, does he mean change of management, really? Because nothing's going to change now, right?
Certainly seems like he's talking about personnel on the sideline at the very least. And that was obviously done on Saturday before they got hockeyed in Ballyshannon yesterday. And that actually came off the back of a question that I put to him. It was like, well, you look at all the people that Kildare are missing. It's actually, things are looking okay, considering they're still in the hunt to get promotion. And that's scoreboard journalism on my part. And he says, actually, no, there's a bit more to this than meets the eye. So it might be telling to see how many of their big players actually do come back for the summer. Granted, there will be personal circumstances there, but maybe some of them who are available won't come back.
All right, Mike Carlson joins us on the line this morning to talk to us about the end of the Gronkowski era. Mike, I didn't realise you were in the States. We've woken you up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Apologies for that.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I'm in Miami, and I could say that I was on spring break with Gronk, having a good time. But I was actually here for a family wedding, so it's a little bit more restrained than Gronkish.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about why Rob Gronkowski is going down in history as the greatest tight end of all time.
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure that he is, and I think you'll find some interesting arguments out there about that. And the reason for it is that classic kind of dichotomy between a player's value, peak value, and a player's career value. And at the tight end position, you've got Tony Gonzalez, who played at a pretty high level for 15 of the 17 years that he was in the league. So he has this huge accumulation of numbers. And Gronk played 9 seasons, of which maybe 6 you could call full seasons. And two were severely truncated. So the overall numbers won't impress the kind of people who were numbers crowds. But the most interesting thing about him statistically is that he played in 16 playoff games, which is exactly one NFL season if you put them together, and had 81 catches, 1,163 yards, and 12 touchdowns, which is a pretty outstanding season for any tight end anyway, and those are all in playoff games. And of course, the other thing is just when, I would say that probably on the peak level, he's easily the greatest tight end of all time because he was such a good blocker. One of the reasons why his body took so much damage, but he was one of the few tight ends you could have block a defensive end at 300 pounds, a linebacker at 230 or 260, and a defensive back with quickness, and rely on him to make those blocks. And of course, he had, especially before the injuries really set him back. And if you watch this year, you could see that to get to speed, he would have to gather himself up and get some momentum. But he had great speed at the start of his career, fantastic hands for a big man. If you go online and look at some of the highlights pictures, there are some amazing catches for a guy his size, being able to reach back against his body, make one-hand catches, and always make catches contested, because the NFL had 2 different rules about pass interference. And when it came to Gronk, you were allowed to do pretty much anything you wanted to do to him, because I looked this up one time. The way the rule reads is that as long as you're not gaining an unfair advantage. Well, he had such an unfair advantage over virtually anybody who covered him. He was faster, better hands than a linebacker. He was much bigger and stronger than a defensive back. That you weren't, you could ride him, you could ride his back, and you weren't gaining an unfair advantage. You were sort of just putting yourself on a level playing field with him.
The other thing he had was the trust of Brady throughout his career, and for reasons that become evident as you kind of watch towards the end, even when Gronkowski is playing on one leg or he's badly injured or not doing particularly well in a game, in the fourth quarter when Brady needs to find somebody, when he needs to get 10 yards or 7 yards for a first down, he's looking for Gronk all the time.
Yeah, and I think you hit the exactly correct word in trust. And that's such a big thing with Brady and his receivers. And there have been a lot of very good receivers who have gone in and out of New England because they couldn't get that trust factor with Brady. And you don't have to look any further back than the last Super Bowl and the Patriots touchdown play, where they ran the same play 3 times, setting up a mismatch with Gronk, and Brady hitting him on the 2-yard line with a pass that depended on him being able to lay out and catch it, because that was the only place that there was an opening for the ball to go. It was a beautiful play, and it'll be characteristic, I think, of what he, at least on field, what he's remembered for.
His timing, and the timing for his character to go into the national public consciousness of the States was perfect as well. He seems to be the perfect icon for his generation.
Yeah, and the old guys who are sports reporters and commentators and journalists didn't really get it. If you look back in retrospect, Gronk's pictures with B.B. Jones, the porn actress who he posed with. What was that? Maybe 2010, 11, 12, somewhere around there. were shocking at the time, according to everybody reporting. And of course, now they would not be any big thing. And I use spring break. I mean, Gronk often seemed to be living his life out of season as if he were on spring break. It was one big party. And, I just think now, especially, people look at that and just think it's great that somebody that good with that much drive and effort to keep himself good, and keep in top shape with all those injuries, and can also have such a good time. And I have no doubt that he's going to move into at least reality television, if not WWE wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads me to believe, Mike, that Gronk is a bit smarter than people give him credit for. That in the off-season, kind of forwarding this idea of his persona of a fun guy who likes to have a good time, that, really, he's a professional athlete who achieved incredibly high things. He wasn't having a fun time all of the time, surely. That there was a sense of him kind of pushing that persona and kind of accentuating that beyond the borders of the reality of his personality.
Yeah, there was when the Patriots signed Michael Bennett a few weeks ago, his brother Martellus, who played with the Pats, and in 16 when they won the Super Bowl, Gronkowski was injured in the through the playoffs, and Martellus was the tight end for the Patriots. He sent him a long Instagram message about the guys on the team, giving him some tips, and the very last line of the message was, "Oh yeah, I forgot about Gronk. He's a lot smarter than people think." And I just thought that was kind of putting it into a good set of words. The one thing that you worry about future career-wise, if it is wrestling, which is something, B.B. Jones said that he would make a great porn star, which would be kind of a come down, so to speak, for him. He was the reason the Patriots were able to draft him in the second round of the draft was that he had a bad back coming out of college, and he's a big, tall guy and hugely well developed, a thoroughbred, and kind of fragile in terms of that thing. And I'm not sure that the wear and tear of wrestling would be anything he'd be able to do for a long time, because your body can take a real punishment doing that. But I wouldn't say I look forward to, because I don't watch that crap, but I expect he'll have a long career doing reality TV, or maybe even a cop show. I think he did. I'm trying to remember which show it was. He did a guest appearance on a cop show, and I think there'd be a career there.
Yeah, no, totally. People are definitely going to watch that. Am I right in saying that he was in the same draft as Aaron Hernandez? Is that right? They came out together?
Yeah, Hernandez went in the fourth round because of the rumors at the time of the problems he had at Florida or Miami, and that was an amazing combination for a couple of years. When you think about it, sometimes the Patriots have had really bad luck with some of the talent that they've accumulated, but part of that is you could guess that Gronk would be injured during his career, that Hernandez might have problems. But Hernandez was not a great blocker, but he was really, if you watched like Cordero Patterson this season with the Patriots, he wasn't that much bigger than Patterson, but you had to account for him as a tight end, which meant he was always getting mismatches. And between the two of them, that's the name of the Patriots game offensively, is to generate mismatches, and the two of them just created so many of them. If they had been able to play together, with Gronk had been healthy and Hernandez had not been in jail, I think they would have done even better. It's an odd thing, and the Patriots have a real problem now because they really don't have anybody at tight end, and they're also very, very thin at wide receiver. So all of a sudden Tom Brady doesn't have any weapons to go to beyond Julian Edelman, really.
They have loads of picks, though, in the top 100. Mike, we'll let you get back to the nice rum and the spring break in Miami. Thanks a million for talking to us.
I might go for an early swim now. Once the sun comes out or something. I wanted to open the door on my balcony here, but it's actually right over 5th Street. And 5th Street's kind of the dividing line between Ocean Beach, which is where all the wedding stuff was, and then South Beach, which is where all the police and TV cameras and college kids are. So I'm safe on this side.
Best of luck. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Mike Carlson giving us some instant reaction to the news that broke overnight that the Rob Gronkowski era in the NFL is over. You're going to miss Gronk? Gronk is kind of he and Barstool Sports are contemporaries.
The same thing, a creation of Barstool Sports, potentially.
Barstool Sports is a creation of Gronk, I would say.
Yeah.
Gronk comes into existence, and Barstool realises, we can just write what he does.
Saturdays are for the boys and all that sort of stuff. Let's hope, when you say, are you going to miss Gronk? How key a part has he been, or is he going to prove to be for the Brady Belichick era in the next couple of years?
They'll find a different way of doing it, because he was injured a lot. But at the same time, he was amazing. I mean, more as the cultural icon.
I know that's what you mean.
Yeah.
As a cultural icon, I'm not for 1 second buying the fact that the Rob Gronkowski we see is the real Rob Gronkowski. There's every chance that maybe he is just a little bit thick, but I'm not buying that for 1 second. These guys have to read fairly complicated playbooks. They're not all stupid. No. I'd say very few of them are, but clearly that idea that Rob Gronkowski is a bit ditzy has been very appealing to a massive mass of people in the United States.
Yeah, it's good for marketing. Right, let's go to basketball. An amazing end to the Super League season that ended in victory for Garvey's Tralee Warriors. We're going to hear from Kieran Donaghy in a minute. Here's the on-court reaction with Kieran, Darren and Fergal O'Sullivan. Have a look.
Lads, you're Super League champions. How are you feeling?
I know whereas this fucker never stood forwards. I just stood forwards last night, but last night was the winning of it. Last night was huge. We finished with a 5 Tralee lads, a 6 really with Quicks falling out, so we won the league last night. That was unbelievable. Tonight we're always going to have the momentum and we're going to have the 6th man, and the cousins came good as always, and unbelievable.
I just want to thank everyone from the town. It's been ridiculous all week, the scramble for tickets like nothing else, but we got the win last night. I don't think anything needed to be said. Tonight was going to take our results. There was absolutely nobody, I don't care who came into the gym, beating us tonight in our home patch.
What does it mean for Tralee though?
Yeah. Good morning to you, Kieran. How you doing?
Morning, Jar.
You're a little bit croaky, but you're all right. You're alive and well.
I'm not too bad, man. I'm back in the office, no rest for the wicked.
There you go. Saturday and Sunday, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, how difficult it was going to be to go back-to-back, the game in Dublin, the game in Tralee. You said there the Saturday night was the winning of it, but in unbelievably dramatic fashion, because you had to really dig it out.
Oh, Saturday night was unbelievable. We were dead and buried. A lot of our starters fouled out. Our big guy, our 7-footer, Duzan, rolled his knee. Well, I actually rolled his knee running off the back of him, which he informed me of last night after we won it. But yeah, we were down to the kids from Tralee really, and Rap, the international Rap Vitus came on and was just huge, grabbed a huge rebound, made free throws, and he was one off a double last night. The young kid, the prodigy. So look, it was one yesterday, or it was one Saturday. But I literally had no words after from my interview, because it was just a feeling that we were dead and buried. We were down 7 with 40 seconds to go or something, and just Fergal hits a big 3, and it was mad ending to a game.
Incredible atmosphere as well, both nights.
Both nights, yeah. Marion got a great crowd, and to be honest, they've been great champions, and the words their players spoke to us after the game yesterday was top class by all of them. Because it was tough for them. They were defending champions. We're coming up to their own floor. They're winning the game. They shouldn't lose that game. They know it. We know it. But they were really class after the game yesterday, kind of saying, look, he did it yesterday. He deserved it. Conor Meany, who's the face of Marion basketball, unbelievable player. He's like a dart thrower when he's shooting his 3-pointers. But he said that, we did it yesterday with 5 or 6 Irish homegrown players on the court, and nobody can take it off us forever.
Yeah, I mean, look, the influence of people coming from abroad and bringing basketball culture to Ireland and helping it is unbelievably important. But equally, the point you're making, it is great to have a bunch of locals who are from within a 5 or 10 mile radius of the team on the court at the end.
Yeah, and everybody got to play last night. All the young rookies got in last night, and a few of our guys that have been unbelievable at training every night, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, games on Saturday, travelling a little bit into the country, not playing too many minutes because we're fighting for a league, and they're just that bit down the roster, but never let it affect their attitude. They always stayed positive. They were always good teammates, and delighted that everybody got in yesterday. Derek and Ellie, Gary Murphy, Paul McMahon all got in yesterday to play, and they're all Tralee, and it's mad really. I was afraid to let myself feel what it would be like to win it, because I just didn't want to jinx myself. So all I kept saying to everybody last night is it's amazing. That was my word. I just couldn't get anything else out of it. I was like, don't ask me for an explanation. It's amazing, okay?
Do you get a sense when you win something like that, Kieran, of how much of a part this has been for your entire life? Like the idea of you growing up watching basketball in Tralee, that great Timmy McCarthy side back in the day, watching them have great periods of success. Do you get to get that whole idea of what this actually means to you personally and what you've seen through your growth as a person over the last couple of decades?
Hi Owen, first of all. No man, it's mad, because the two leagues I won in 04, 03, 04 and 08, 09, they were running. They were a playoff series over a weekend, and we won one of them in Cork and won one of them in Limerick. So the last time that trophy was lifted in the complex was '96. I was 13. I was in the back of the team photo that made all the papers the following day, just like the picture in the Examiner this morning. There was so many kids in it. I was that kid. 13. I was that kid when I was 13, and so to go full circle like that and to win it in front of our own fans, because like even the two cups we won, we always won them in Dublin, and we won them in Cork, we won them in Limerick. I never got to win anything with the Tigers in Tralee. So for the Warriors, the whole town, the Brendan's Club, the Tralee Imperials Club, that's why this time it's more special, because it's actually the whole town is behind it, not just one club in the town. So them days in '96 were what when we were trying to get this team together, we were trying to create something that could have an impact on the community, that could have an impact on the kids in the community in a very positive light. And we were like, if we can get the Super League thing up and running, we might be able to inspire the next generation of kids to go home. Like when I was 13, after that, when they won the league in '96 with Ricardo Leonard, John T and Vinnie Murphy, I went home and I was out the back that night for 4 hours. I went home at 10 and I was out the back till 1 o'clock shooting, and the neighbours were like, "Do tell that fella put away the ball." That's the story in my book. My grandmother saying, "Kieran, you have to go to bed," and my adrenaline is going through my veins, and I'm out the back shooting, pretending I'm Rick Leonard or Vinnie Murphy or John T. But that's what got me, cycling to the complex at 6 o'clock in the morning to go play. That's what got me all the hours outside in the cold with my gloves on, with holes in the gloves, shooting the basketball. That was what got me there. The NBA was great, and that's why I think more people should be bringing their kids to games in Ireland, support your basketball club in Ireland, because when you go there and you bring your kids there, they'd actually really get inspired by something they see live. The TV can be great, and we all can't be, I can't be LeBron James, but maybe I could be a Fergal O'Sullivan, or I could be a Darren O'Sullivan, or I could be one of these homegrown guys that are just going to come out there and do their role for the team. And then when you least expect it, they just excel all your wildest dreams and just become like winners right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, they're incredible scenes last night, as you can see on screen at the moment. It must give you so much pride thinking of all the kids who annoyed neighbours with their basketballs last night.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you're kind of hoping for, is that was the reaction. I was talking to a cousin of mine, Brian Stevenson, Hillary's cousin, and he said his daughter came home after the Temple O game, and they couldn't get her down. This was 2 weeks ago when we had to win the do or die game against Temple O, and she said that she couldn't get Abby, her daughter, down from the high. That Abby was just electric. It was she said she was after having 10 cups of coffee. It was just, there was no getting her down, and that's what basketball can bring. And it's a funny game that way, that it's just electric. Yeah, I think somebody went to people about doing a documentary on us this year, the TV companies, and I don't think anybody took it, but I'm telling you, if they got what happened over the last 48 hours, you couldn't actually script it. Hollywood would throw it out, they'd ball it up and throw it away.
Your Saturday performance, we had Kieran Shannon on earlier on, and he was saying that it was up there with any of your career performances in either of the sports that you've become synonymous with. What was going through your mind when was it 14 points down at one stage with 4 minutes left to go? Are you thinking this is gone? And what are you actually doing? What's your internal monologue at that point?
My internal monologue was to start getting up and getting aggressive and trying to put pressure on the ball and trying to get stops, to get momentum. We had to take risks. We were down, I think it was 12. We had to take risks. And so, yeah, it was just about getting scrappy on defence. We couldn't let them get one offensive rebound. So it was like trying to get every defensive rebound, trying to hold them to one shot, try and make that shot a tough shot, and then try and score, try and push the ball and score. And, yeah, we just had guys make massive plays. Quiggs banked a 3 in. I got a few layups where the ball was rolled into me, and I let the ball roll up the clock. So if the ball is rolling, if I don't touch the ball when it's inbounded, the clock doesn't start. So there was like 40, 50 seconds to go, and somebody was throwing me the ball into the basket, and I was just letting it roll and roll, and like that saved every fraction of a second. And it just shows you never give up till it's over, because every fraction of a second means something. And we had to be very mindful of the clock and the scenario we were in yesterday, late on in the game. Like, I'm guarding Conor Meany, I'm on 4 fouls. So if I have one more foul, we're gone. I'm on team fouls. We're on team fouls, the team. So if I foul him, he's 2 shots. He's 92% free throw shooter. And Pat Price comes up to me last night and goes, "What were you doing trying to steal the ball off him?" And then I just got lucky and knocked it and got the ball and got 2 free throws, and I was crossing myself, because when I was going to the free throw line, we were after making the comeback. We're down 1 with 20 seconds to go, and I missed the first free throw. And I was heated with myself, because going to the line, I was like, I'm going to nail these 2, because I shot terribly from the free throw line all weekend. Probably maybe the pressure of the whole thing, but my free throws haven't been great all season, I won't lie. But yeah, I had to make one to bring it to overtime. And Paul Dick, our point guard, who's been literally amazing this year, all year, playing with a busted ankle. Key Jumper had 20 points and 12 rebounds on a busted knee. He shouldn't have played the second half yesterday. Paddy McQuinn, the physio, was like, "I don't know how this fella's gone back out playing." So there was all these little subplots of guys just going above and beyond the pay grade. Like, it was mental. And like Paul said, he was sitting on the bench yesterday above in Dublin, Saturday night above in Dublin. And he said, "I never felt so comfortable that you were going to win the game." Like, he just said he was completely relaxed in the fact that these 5 Tralee kids that played together in a county league game about 2 months ago to win the Kerry County Championship in the local scene down here, that 5 was out there balling against the league champions from last year and one of the best teams in the league.
Was it the best you've ever been in any sport? Was it like as well as you played?
It was probably just kind of I was probably just I don't know. I was just out of my mind, desperate for it, willing to do claw scratch with my bare fingernails, whatever it took to try and just get us back into the game. I have to watch it back. I just know I was kind of in some kind of zone where it was desperate measures, and that requires desperate actions, and they work for you one in I don't know, last night or Saturday night was probably 1 in maybe 1,000 or 1 in a million kind of scenario, maybe 1 in 1,000. But March Madness is happening in NCAA college basketball. My friend JK rang me from New York. He was like, "Man, that's the craziest March Madness shit I ever seen."
Fair play to Basketball Ireland as well for all the coverage. It was live on Facebook, and we can actually have a quick glance at the interview after that one. Roll it there, Tommy.
They're champions for a reason. They're a really good team. I don't know. I can't really explain it. 5 Tralee fellas there at the end. We just scrapped, when it looked like it was gone. We could do nothing else but scrap and fight for it, and we fought on our backs. Fergal made a big shot. He makes big shots all his life. He made a big shot, and that got us into it, but we stole it. Another injury, Dusan gone. Jumper in foul trouble. Quigley in foul trouble. Paul Dick fouled out. It's unbelievable.
Totes emotion, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Oh man, I was like, honest to God, I was on the verge of breaking down. He was like, "Cole, get yourself together, Kieran." It's the club, like, you know, it culminates in what happened over the weekend. But like, I've been at every committee meeting on a Monday night. Hillary said Brexit would have been sorted last Monday night. We were there for 3 hours, like trying to organise the weekend, trying to get us looked after the weekend. Like, there was so much going on. There was the Saturday night game. There was recovery afterwards. There was a pool session. There was getting the physios to get their physio beds into the pool. There was active recovery. There was skin compression shots sent from attack. It was mad. It was just, and then that was, they kept talking about Sunday in the committee meeting. They were an hour talking about Sunday, the big game Sunday, tickets. I was like, lads, it's all about Saturday. Like, if we don't win Saturday in Dublin, there will be a Sunday, but it's going to be a lot harder. Like, I was like, Saturday is the game. We got to get up the night before. We got to get a team meal. But in typical Warrior style, like, we went to Five Guys for our team meal on Friday night. So to all you dietitians out there, I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry about it.
Oh my God.
Don't worry about it.
That's where our team meal in Five Guys. So I'm just trying to plug in the charger here, Ger. Sorry.
No, you're grand. We let you go. Congratulations! It was a brilliant achievement. Pretty amazing,
man. We'll see you during the week.
We will.
Shot clock during the week. There'll be some Warrior stuff in it.
Fair enough. If it's wall to wall Warriors for 1 week only, you're allowed. Kieran, good stuff.
Thanks, Owen. Thanks, Ger.
That's pretty amazing stuff. Five Guys.
Yeah, that's some top class nutrition right there. Screw your protein bars. Give me a double cheeseburger. It's sensational, really. I'd say last night in Tralee would have been unbelievable. Like, nothing really kind of beats that sort of level of atmosphere when you're in a basketball hall like that, and it's indoors and the sound is reverberating and all that sort of thing. It's as good as it gets in terms of any sporting arena, really. And the thing is, you don't want to talk about what this means for the future just yet, because enjoying this right now is all that's on their mind. But there is something of a bandwagon, I think it's fair to say, that developed around that team over the last couple of years, which is more than a bandwagon now. This is rock solid momentum.
And the sport's getting a bandwagon, because all you need for people to be interested in sport is teams of equal ability who are good, competing against each other, and who have good characters. That will get people coming. It'll be like, this game's going to be good, it's going to be close, it's not going to be a blowout, it means something to both teams, you know. Yeah, and you have a poet laureate in Kieran Donaghy telling everybody this is amazing.
Yeah, so long may it continue, and the backlash against the Warriors next year from the Dublin teams, and indeed teams from elsewhere around the country, is going to be strong. So, like, you already get to that sense that it's like, can't wait for next season already.
Yeah, the hype videos are on their way. That is all from us this morning on a specially extended version of OTBAM. We figured we'd keep it going until we got Kieran there. So, rugby with Alan Quinlan, GAA with Kieran Shannon, football with Nathan / football politics, Gronk with Carlson, and basketball with Donaghy. Not a bad show. If you are interested in sports broadcasting, we're here every morning from 7:45. You can tune in live on the Off The Ball website. Just go to offtheball.com, click the listen live, and we can be a part of your breakfast routine every morning. Your podcast's going to be up soon. We're all over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/offtheball as well. The radio show live from 7 o'clock this evening with Joe. There is plenty for them to get their teeth stuck into in terms of the hurling, football, and of course the FAI politics, as well as match preview of Ireland against Georgia, which is now an absolute must-win game for Mick McCarthy. So that is it from today. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.